Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Leo Naranjo IV, Republican candidate for governor in 2026. Today, I'd like to take a little time to discuss the May 2025-2026 budget revise that Mr. Gavin Newsom has presented to you, the citizens of this state. We've recently had a 2-hour and 44-minute video by Mr. Newsom describing where we are as a state, how we stand financially, and what we've done financially through the past years. I'm not going to take 2 hours and 44 minutes to rebut what Mr. Newsom has boldly and expressively decided to inform us on how great he's been as our governor. Quite the contrary, I'm going to take a much shorter time only to highlight and to expose the examples of failure that we've had under his leadership. So if I may, let us begin. In 2025, in May, Mr. Newsom came out with his video to describe how we as the state of California have exceeded expectations all across the board, not only locally, nationally, but worldwide. Since 2010, we have now moved up into being the 4th largest economy in the world. It's quite an achievement. We have more Fortune 500 companies than any other state within the union. That also is quite an achievement. We've made $675 billion in worldwide trade since 2024 alone. We have $183 billion in exports from California in 2024 alone as well. Mr. Newsom highlighted how we are number 1 in some of the following categories. In manufacturing, we've created over $412 billion of profits annually. In agriculture, we've gotten $60 billion of yearly profits from our agricultural businesses. And in innovation, we are second to none, with over 1,300 IPOs created since 2011 and 55% of all venture capital being poured right here into our glorious and wonderful state. Our population is surging with over 230,000 new individuals coming into the borders of California to reside here. We dominate in most and every critical category that California has taken and kept record of. These are the highlights from Governor Gavin Newsom for his budget revise. But unfortunately, Mr. Newsom has failed to mention some of the things that has happened since his tenure as governor in the state of California. Some of these things you can attribute to the current president, Donald Trump. Some of these things you can attribute to climate change, and some of these things you cannot attribute to chance. Most of the detrimental things that have happened to California are a direct result of Gavin Newsom's leadership, and no other explanation other than that. And so for some of these items, let me please express the following. We are the 4th largest economy in the world. Yes, that was reported by the news. California has moved up from the 5th to the 4th largest economy of the world. But the reason is not for anything that we did that was extraordinary. The reasoning is not because of something we did that was outstanding or innovative. The reason why we are now the 4th largest economy in the world is because the Japanese economy slipped and fell to 5th place, a position that we had only recently held ourselves. We haven't done anything extraordinary to move up. We just got lucky at someone else's failure when they moved downward. Yes, at one time we probably did have more Fortune 500 companies anywhere else in the United States of America. But unfortunately, in recent years, and you've seen the reports, you've read the news, you've heard the news, we've lost Fortune 500 companies as fast as they're created. Many businesses are leaving California exactly for the high taxes, the over-regulations, and the restrictions that they are encountering since they've been here and once they get here. Some examples of major businesses that are leaving with hundreds of years of history within our state. Chevron Oil, Valero Oil, Phillips 66. We even had an impact from the burger stands. We have companies that are leaving California as fast as they can because of regulation and the requirements that Mr. Newsom has governed his way through in the state of California. We're number 1 in manufacturing, maybe at one time, but not any longer, because our factories are closing down. Our businesses are closing down. We used to be number one in agriculture, but instead of staying number one in agriculture, we're stifling our agricultural growth by denying the very water that our farmers need to produce the products for us to maintain competitive in agricultural business. You can't keep a $60 billion a year business going when you restrict the very essential resources that those farmers need to produce their product. And as far as innovation goes, we've led in all kinds of categories with innovation, not just in IPOs, but innovation of how to destroy an oil industry, innovation on how to destroy a logging industry, innovations on how we can destroy small business industries by over-regulating and producing laws through our state legislature that do anything other than prosper for businesses or have the situation where they can prosper. But instead, we become innovative in creating a climate where businesses are slowly starved to death through taxation and overregulation. Mr. Newsom says that we are number one in the critical and valuable categories throughout our state. Well, at one point that too might have been true prior to him being our governor. But since then, we're no longer number one in education. We're near the bottom of education. We're the only state that taxes our retirees and their military benefits. We seem to be headlong and headstrong into pouring billions of dollars into a train that everybody has said is not needed, is not wanted, and will produce nothing for us. Over $30 billion on a train to nowhere that has yet to lay a single track. How is that? We've lost $30 billion on dealing with the homeless situation with no results. We still have the same amount of homeless people today as when Mr. Newsom started pouring in the money to resolve the problem. Over 180,000 people reside in California with no homes that are living on the street. We've forced communities to take in low-income housing, but we've disguised the housing question as low income. Well, if anybody has actually inquired as to what that means, these income residential areas are $500, $600, $700 a month for income basis alone. How do people who cannot support themselves with money in their pockets are going to be able to manage in their homes, tiny or whatever, on their own? Some individuals recently acquired into a sweep in a community of over 100 individuals that were removed from an illegal encampment along railroad backs and roadways. Only 5 people accepted housing as an alternative, most of the excuses being because of pets. This can't go on as a state where we pour billions of dollars into a problem to see no results whatsoever, but a continuation of the same problem. Under Mr. Newsom, we lost $35 billion in unemployment funds, erroneously given out during COVID, and the great, don't worry about the check, just send it. We'll figure it out later. $35 billion of money that Californians pour into a system that just went out the door, that even the news media were making reports of how easy it was to scam our state. The federal government has raised up the stakes for California by letting us know we still owe them $18 billion in unemployment insurance funding. Because of that debt, the legislature has decided to increase business taxes in California to compensate for that debt and to repay it. And by increasing the taxes on businesses, all that you are eventually doing is increasing the taxes on us as consumers, because we're now going to fit that bill, not the companies. Ladies and gentlemen, we've spent billions of dollars and we have no idea where it's gone, where it went, what it's supposed to do, because our state legislature signs what they call as the non-disclosure agreements. You are not privileged to find out what they're doing with our money, even though it's our money. Our fiscal situation in 2024 was such that it was already predicted we would be facing double-digit deficits for the next 4 fiscal years. Mr. Newsom's 2025-2026 budget revise accounts for the next fiscal year +1. Already we have $16 billion in debt, and we're facing another $12 billion in debt in the 2027 fiscal year, long after Mr. Newsom's reign as governor here will come to an end. If you all recall, Gavin Newsom was handed over a $100 billion surplus for California back in 2022 and squandered it the following year and left us with a $78 billion deficit. Today, Mr. Newsom cites that we have a $12 billion deficit, perhaps even a $16 billion deficit, all because of one person, all because of one man, and all because of his policies, and that is the President Donald J. Trump. I'm not saying what Mr. Newsom is saying is right, wrong, or indifferent. But in the first 2-hour and 44-minute video that this man presented, 15 minutes was spent chastising Donald Trump and his policies for our failures and shortcomings. Mr. Newsom was quick to point out, and I thought I had heard it correctly or incorrectly, and I had to re-look at his video a couple of times to catch what he was saying. In this fiscal year back in January, Mr. Newsom is cited as stating that we had a balanced budget of over $300 million surplus. But the budget analysts, according to him, were incorrect. They were wrong. They didn't get the number exactly right. And what Mr. Newsom was trying to tell us was we underestimated our tax collections, and we actually had an $8 billion surplus. If you include the budget surplus that he stated, the 300 plus million, and then you add that into the $8 billion surplus the tax collection people underestimated, we had over an $8.5 billion surplus going into this fiscal year. Now we're faced with a $16 billion deficit. I might be a little slow on math, but I'm not stupid on the numbers. Mr. Gavin Newsom is trying to say that our $16 billion deficit is directly attributed to Donald Trump and his policies. And he cites the following. We've lost $10 billion in capital gains alone this year. We've lost $2.5 billion in corporate profit taxes this year. We've lost $2 billion in lower wage taxable income. And we've lost $1.5 billion in reduced personal income taxes. There's our deficit. But Mr. Newsom, you told us we had an $8 billion surplus. To go from $8 billion to negative $16 billion, that, sir, tells me you again have overspent. You've overspent the money that California produces by over $24 billion, once more leaving us in a lurch. If we have $675 billion in worldwide trade this year alone and $183 billion in exports, how are we, the fourth largest economy in the world, $16 billion in debt? With the projection of 2027 being another $15 billion in debt, and the preceding 3 years, again, of double-digit deficits. It's not a matter of how much taxes are being collected, it's what our money is being spent on and how it's wasted. Mr. Gavin Newsom is right now fighting to find another additional $15 billion for the Medi-Cal program to support and to maintain his view of giving people unauthorized to be in our country medical coverage. The legislature, in a recent news article not less than 24 hours ago, are behind closed doors arguing amongst themselves. Democrat legislatures arguing amongst themselves, how are we going to keep a promise to a constituency that we ourselves have declared we are going to protect? Everyone should remember the day that the legislature stood on the Capitol steps of Sacramento and proudly and boldly explained, we will do everything we can to protect our illegals. And so it is that we now have and facing over $30 billion deficit for Medi-Cal programs because we have people who are on it who are not legally allowed to be in this country, much less this state. We're going to destroy California to ensure that these folks are covered medically. We're going to continue to provide billions of dollars into a train that has never laid a track in the years since they started building it. We're not going to look and find out who took this land, who acquired this land, and who paid for this land in order to make this boondoggle of what we now call the train to nowhere. We're going to pour in billions of dollars to create a city around an active duty Air Force base, namely Travis, so that we can have something that's go green, 100% electric and renewable energy. Yet we've encircled an active military base. For those people looking down the future, you know exactly what that means. That base will at some point be slated for closure because it impacts the city. Not the military mission, not the military need. The city will demand its closure. We have, through regulation and overtaxation, punished our oil industry to the degree that they have thrown up their hands in disgust and they're leaving. 20% of our oil producing capacity will soon be gone from this state by the end of 2025. The analysts predict that with the new law that our Air Resource Board has created, and those folks have been appointed by Gavin Newsom himself, we stand and are on the brink of, as of 1 July 2025, looking at a 67-cent increase in our already currently high gas prices. For those that don't understand what a 67-cent surge in gas prices mean, beyond the gas pump, let me briefly explain that as well. And I'm going to round up figures just to make it simpler. So Californians on the 1st of July, we as a whole, Democrats, Republicans, Libertarians, Independents, all of us will soon be faced with a 70-cent increase in our gas taxes. Well, who do you think puts food in the supermarkets? Who do you think fills up the shelves at Bel Air, at Raley's, at Safeway, at Piggly Wiggly even, if they're even here in this state? Drivers, truck drivers, transportation drivers. And when those people have their fuel costs jump to 70 additional cents, they're going to charge these stores an accommodating amount. So in simplistic terms for you and I in our understanding moment, we're going to see from 70 cents to $1 increases in all of our staple food sources, all of our staple goods on literally everything that we purchase in California. And it doesn't stop there. Gas prices are going to go up at the pump, but so are the fuel prices that heat our homes. So are the electric prices that cool our homes during the summer, which, by the way, is right around the corner. We're going to see increases in how much water is being delivered to and from the state. And we might even be threatened with drought conditions so that we have to cut back, forcing yet even more price increases. These organizations, CARB, the Public Utilities Commission, most of these are staffed by individuals that Gavin Newsom has handpicked. They're not looking at the impact of what they're going to do to the economy, to the communities. They're doing what they see fit to do for their agenda, which is to remove carbons from our footprint, to remove fossil fuels from our life and our livelihoods. They are hell-bent on generating a go-green environment in the state of California, regardless of the cost to the state, much less to you and I. Again, let me refer back to Chevron and Valero Oil leaving the state by the end of the year and no later than the end of next year. That, as the analysts predict, is a near 20% drop in our gas-producing abilities. With that, the analysts have concluded, and some have even predicted, you are facing a near 200% increase in gasoline prices alone, from the current $5.20 a gallon to the near $8 a gallon people are predicting. That's almost 250% jump in gas prices in less than 2 calendar years. Imagine, if you will, your fuel costs jumping 250% at the pump. You wake up on Friday morning to find out when you fill up your tank for the next work week, you now have to pay $8 a gallon for your fuel. But ladies and gentlemen, that's only fuel. We have yet to pay for the transportation costs of sending our goods to the stores, to the supermarkets, because those prices are going to jump up 250% or 300%, if not more. Everything in California will be out of reach for our most vulnerable individuals, those who supposedly are homeless and are trying to get housing, those on fixed income who are barely managing their financial status now in the face of constantly raising prices. A 300% increase in your cost of living is going to amount to what? Super high prices on everything. And in short order, we're going to see the demands from companies and unions and workers who are going to want an increase in their wages to accommodate. And from there, the spiral of watching California destroy itself from within will continue. Ladies and gentlemen, we have to make changes within this state. We have to make changes in our leadership and our legislation. We cannot continue on a path that destroys the state for the purpose of creating a political agenda. And Mr. Newsom in his governorship for this time has once again highlighted all the positives, but overshadowing all the negatives. On all the things that he cited as our losses, our capital gains loss, well, these are reported back 2 years ago. The reason why we're losing $10 billion in capital gains is because, as they declare, our 1% earners are fleeing California. We've lost $2.5 billion in corporate profits. That's because the businesses are leaving. Those businesses that have been here for hundreds of years are departing the state of California for other states who have lower pricing, lower taxes, and less regulations. We've lost $2 billion in lower taxable wages. Well, that's because by forcing companies to adapt to a $20 minimum wage, you now have companies cutting back on their employee hours to accommodate, raising their prices and slashing their hours. You have $1.5 billion of reduced personal income taxes coming into the state coffers. Well, that's because in 2020, we lost 2 million residents. For whatever the reasons are, those people left California. Have we gotten 230,000 people in? We might have, but we don't know how many left in the same time frame. Mr. Newsom's not going to provide those numbers. But how many of you out there really know of anybody who has already left? How many of you know somebody who is thinking of leaving or is in the process of leaving? When gas prices go up 70 cents, that might push them over, but they will definitely go over and they will definitely depart this state when gas prices surge to $8 a gallon. This isn't a woe is me moment. This isn't a, oh, the sky is falling moment. This is what the news is reporting. This is what the analysts are predicting. This is what people are saying about our prosperous state, how it's not as prosperous as Mr. Newsom is trying to make it out to be. Gavin Newsom has long ago, in my opinion, given up trying to govern California as a useless endeavor. He's accomplished his initial goal, which is to be the governor of this state. But in 2024, his eyes locked onto a new prize. His eyes locked onto a new vision. And that vision for Mr. Gavin Newsom is how to become the president of the United States of America. Who's running California? Because it sure isn't Gavin Newsom. Gavin Newsom raises his head, makes declarations, threatens, cajoles, stands up as if he's standing up to a bully to tell the people in the internet world, come and get me, tough guy. Well, that's all fine and dandy. When you're not a leader, that's what you do. Mr. Newsom is not a leader. He's now set his sights on the 2024 election, but that's past. That time is gone. And so he's looking forward to 2028. Mr. Newsom is only going to band-aid problems in California until he leaves this state in 2026. And thank God he's termed out, in my humble opinion. The best thing that man has ever done was to find himself face-to-face with a termed-out condition for governor. And in my humble opinion, he is still and will always be labeled as the most successful failure of a governor this state has ever had in its 175-year history. Gavin Newsom is going to leave the state of California, whether he wants to admit it or not, as the only governor who has lost us a congressional seat in Washington, D.C. Mr. Newsom is not interested in saving oil companies. Mr. Newsom is not interested in having dialogue or debate with Republicans. Mr. Newsom is doing everything he can to protect his image for a 2028 presidential run. And I don't believe Californians are silly enough to believe when Mr. Newsom creates a podcast to sit down with conservative Republicans and ask them, what can we do to work together? That man has no interest in working with anybody except working towards his own goals, which are to be president of the United States of America. That is why California right now is falling apart under his leadership. And if anything, this should show you exactly the type of leader we do not need as a presidential campaign election or as a presidential campaign candidate. Mr. Newsom is not interested in saving California, but there are people who are, and I am one of them. If we have such a wonderful budget, how are we $16 billion in the hole? If we are such a leader in innovation, why are we in debt year after year after year since you became governor? If you are not in charge of the state capitol in Sacramento, California, who is? Because right now, from where I'm standing, it looks like Mr. Scott Wiener is running the show with as many propositions and articles as he can to pass through the legislation. We don't have a bipartisan legislature status in Sacramento, California. We have the mandates of the Democrat Go Green establishment and the overzealous progressive liberals running the state. The first words out of the state legislature's mouth to face and deal with the deficit that we have is to find new sources of revenue. And that means tax raises. They've already cited in news articles that the legislature are looking to increase taxes on businesses and the business community, the 1%, those of the high income earners of this state, to help us solve our budget problem. Once again, the old tried and true playbook of the Democrats is coming out. When in debt, tax the rich. When in debt, tax the businesses. And then when they leave, tax the citizens. I know it's coming, and you know it's coming. So what do we do in this problem? In 2026, ladies and gentlemen, we have to make changes. We have to start looking at what we're spending our money on. We have to start demanding results for where our cash is spent. We also have to know where it's going as well. We can't keep spending and taxing our way to prosperity, because at some point that nasty three-letter word is going to come in: cut. What is going to be cut? Well, our state legislature has already decided for us what needs to be cut in order to maintain their promises to a community that they've endeared themselves to, that they will at all costs above the citizens of this state protect. They will cut services. They will cut fire. They will cut police. They will cut parks. They will cut anything that helps seniors, but they will not cut Medi-Cal coverage for unauthorized individuals who reside in the state of California. Oh no, they won't do that. That would be a lie for the promise that they made to their protected constituency. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for the time that you've given me here to provide you with a small glimpse of where California actually stands financially. And I'm not privy to all the information that the GAO has. I'm not privy to all the financial information that the governor has. But I do know figures. And Mr. Newsom, you have once again marched California into a deficit of your own making, not Mr. Trump's. It doesn't need 30 minutes of a 2.5-hour video to declare why California is now bankrupt again under your leadership, not Donald Trump's presidency. This is a problem that you've created, and now all that you're doing is seemingly washing your hands of the entire problem and process while you go and pretend that you're a candidate for presidency in 2028. California is a wonderful state, and it's a great state. It just has horrible leaders and leadership. And I hope to change that in 2026. Thank you very much, everyone, for your attention. Thank you very much for everyone looking at this video. And please share and like all over, everywhere.